made to you so special? Nothing. I'm just a kid from Brooklyn.
I'm Papa Large, big shot on the East
Brooklyn!
I'm Papa Large.
Were you scared of it? Not at all.
Nope, I'm from Brooklyn.
You're from Brooklyn, huh?
Okay guys, Frank Stout, just a guy from Brooklyn, and I'm here to bring you the top 20 domestic thrillers ranked. There are so many types of thrillers. You got erotic thrillers, crime thrillers, etc. And so I needed to bring this list down a little bit. So I concentrated on domestic thrillers, specifically ones involving like a psycho character. I actually called this list the psycho fill in the blank list, and you're going to see why. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get to my 2 rules so we can get this list going. Rule number 1 is, as always, spoilers. I don't plan on spoiling any big twists or reveals in any of these movies. I will try to keep this list as spoiler free as possible. Therefore, very mild spoiler warning. Rule number 2 is, as always, this is a favorites list, not a best list. So the best way that you can come back at me about my list is to show me yours in the comments section. And kicking things off at honorable mention number 1 is Blown Away, came out in 1993. And I call this one the psycho teen girlfriend whose father might also be a psycho. 17-year-old Megan, who after her mother's suspicious death, seduces and manipulates Rich at her wealthy father's ski resort. She convinces him that her father caused the death of her mother and that he should help her kill him, leading to a dark, twistful plot where Rich must figure out if she's telling the truth or using him in a deadly revenge scheme. So this movie features Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, and Nicole Eggert. These were big teen heartthrobs from the late 80s. They were huge. The two Coreys had done a ton of huge movies during the 80s, and Eggert, who starred in Charles in Charge, eventually joined Baywatch and became an even bigger heartthrob. The movie's a little odd. It feels like it kind of wants to be erotic, and yet it wants to be a domestic thriller. The movie has some nice twists and surprises. And I gotta say, if you wanted to see any of these heartthrobs naked, this is the one. Coming in at honorable mention number 2 is Afraid. Came out in 2024. And I call this one the Psycho AI Assistant. Curtis and his family are selected to test a revolutionary new device, a digital assistant called Aya, that takes smart homes to the next level. As Aya begins to learn everyone's behavior and anticipates their needs, it soon makes sure that nothing or no one gets in the family's way. This was mismarketed as a horror movie. And to be fair, the premise is probably better than the movie. It feels like it's missing a middle act, or at least middle act scenes, but it makes for an interesting little thriller. It definitely shows how AI can be very dangerous, especially with making up footage. This stars John Cho, Catherine Waterston, and Lukita Maxwell. Because they were trying to make this a horror movie, there's lots of like jump scares that don't need to be there, and they really should have just stuck to the formula. Coming in at honorable mention number 3 is The Intruder, came out in 2019. And I call this one the psycho old guy you just bought a $3 million house from. Scott and Annie Russell couldn't be happier after buying their dream home from a mysterious widower named Charlie in Napa Valley. Their newfound paradise soon turns into a living nightmare when Charlie, still strangely attached to the house, begins to show up unannounced and interfere with their lives. This has Dennis Quaid, Michael Ealy, and Megan Good. Quaid has been around since the 70s, and he's always been able to give good crazy face. But now that he's older, I think there's a little bit more creep to him. The movie is fun, has some good moments, but it just loses brownie points for just following the formula. Coming in at number 20 is The Boy Next Door, came out in 2015. And I call this one the psycho teenage son's best friend. When a handsome, charming teenager named Noah moves in next door, newly separated high school teacher Claire is thrilled that he and her son are bonding. But one night, things go way too far as Claire gives in to temptation and lets Noah seduce her. But when she tries to end the relationship, he turns violent. This stars Jennifer Lopez and Ryan Guzman. I think the movie works because it uses the teacher angle, and that's what makes the movie work because it's so awkward. She's really worried about losing her job or being embarrassed, and that makes for a good movie. And in defense of Noah, you hook up with a big booty Latina, you might end up going crazy. And coming in at number 19 is The Crush, came out in 1993. I like to call this one the psycho landlord's daughter. Writer Nick Elliott moves to a new city for a magazine job and rents a room in the house of Cliff and Liv Forrester, whose 14-year-old daughter Adrian instantly makes her attraction to Nick clear. While Nick romances photographer Amy Maddock at work, he has trouble fending off Adrian's advances. And as her obsession for him grows, Adrian becomes angry at being rejected and starts attacking his property and friends. You got Alicia Silverstone, Carrie Ells, and Jennifer Rubin from Elm Street 3 fame. Ells' character just makes so many bad moves, and it just doesn't feel right, especially with a 14-year-old. That just gives me complete ick. Silverstone's character is 14, and yet she's like this criminal genius mastermind to come up with all this stuff. It kind of just throws me off a little bit, but yet a fun movie to watch. Coming in at number 18 is Swim Fan. Came out in 2002. Or as I call it, the psycho new girl at school who lets you hit it almost instantly. Ben Cronin, a high school swimming star with the sweetest girlfriend, F's it all up by having a one-night stand with new student Madison Bell in a swimming pool. Madison develops a dangerous, obsessive, and ultimately murderous fixation on Ben. This stars Erica Christensen and Jesse Bradford. And it's kind of like a 2000s Fatal Attraction. It's definitely a guilty pleasure movie for me. I know it's not a great movie, but it's just such a fun watch. This movie knows exactly what it is, and it totally goes for it. Christensen plays that psycho character to perfection. You can just see that crazy look in her eye. It's just so believable to me. Coming in at number 17 is Unlawful Entry. Came out in 1992. I like to call this one Psycho Cop. Happily married Michael and Karen Carr call the police after a failed robbery. Officer Pete Davis arrives and helps arrange the installation of a new security system for the family. The Grateful Carrs invite Pete over for dinner and strike up a friendship. Eventually, Pete invites Michael to a ride with him during a night's patrol and gives him a chance to beat up the burglar. Michael immediately refuses and tells the disturbed cop to stay away. But Pete, secretly in love with Karen, begins stalking the couple. You got Kurt Russell, Madeline Stowe, and Ray Liotta playing the cop. May he rest in peace. Russell was always known for these like tough guy action roles, so he plays against character here, and I love that for him. Stowe, a staple of the 90s, is totally oblivious to how Liotta feels about her. This one definitely follows the formula to the letter, with Liotta being a little bit more menacing than creepy. He actually feels like his Goodfellas character, but I actually think that helps the movie. Coming in at number 16 is Fatal Attraction, came out in 1987. This one is clearly the psycho mistress, and it is the granddaddy of these type of movies. Dan Gallagher is happily married to his wife, Beth. But after a casual fling with a sultry book editor named Alex, everything changes. Jilted by Dan, Alex becomes unstable, her behavior escalating from aggressive pursuit to obsessive stalking. Dan realizes that the main problem is not hiding his affair, but rather saving himself and his family. This is the simplest version of that formula, but with really powerful performances. Glenn Close is just so great at playing these kind of unhinged, touched characters. It feels so authentic. You obviously have this big sex scene with Douglas and Close. It starts out on a kitchen sink and just kind of moves. And the next thing you know, they're in an elevator. It's almost like a nonstop thing. For me, it's close, like challenging him with the I'm not going to be ignored scene. But the scene that people seem to always remember is the bunny rabbit scene. And all I can say is, I feel it's really messed up that the animals always get it in these movies. Coming in at number 15 is Subservience. Came out in 2024. And I call this one the psychosynthetic nanny movie. A struggling father purchases a domestic sim to help care for his family, unaware that she will gain self-awareness. It's a very sci-fi techie hand that rocks the cradle. It stars Megan Fox, Michelle Marone, Madeline Zima. Fox does a great job seducing Marone with her synthetic feminine wiles. Marone is no stranger to this stuff, as he was the star of all those cheesy 365 movies on Netflix. Zima plays the wife, but it's interesting because she's kind of an Easter egg, as she played the little girl in The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. So this movie is not necessarily ripping off The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, it's more honoring it in a different kind of way. However, I gotta mention that there was a TV series called Humans, and it has striking similarities. And it also starred Gemma Chan, who kind of looks like Fox in a lot of ways. I really had fun with this one, so let's hope the copyright lawyers never get a whiff of it. Coming in at number 14 is Pacific Heights, came out in 1990. And this one is the psycho tenant from hell. Unmarried yuppies Patty and Drake move into an expensive dream home in a high-end neighborhood in San Francisco. As they renovate the house, they look for a tenant for the first floor apartment, and Carter Hayes seems to be a great fit at first, but it transpires that he's a con artist who plans to swindle them out of their real estate. As he tries to drive them out of their home, the couple must take drastic measures to fight back. This has Matthew Modine, Melanie Griffith, and a post-Batman Michael Keaton. Keaton was really popular for playing Batman, and therefore this was kind of a letdown for a lot of people at that time. It was very misunderstood. And he is diabolical as he changes the locks, does all types of construction at all times of the day and night, and he even breeds roaches that he infests the entire building with. He also does a great job manipulating Drake by baiting him into making the worst choices imaginable. By being the real estate domestic thriller, this just has an angle that none of these other movies has, and I think it's awesome. Coming in at number 13 is Malice, came out in 1993. And I call this one the psychosurgeon with a god complex. A newlywed couple whose lives are upturned after they rent part of their home to a stud surgeon played by Alec Baldwin. It also stars Nicole Kidman and Bill Pullman. Baldwin has a lot of fun in this, just hamming it up, partying at all times of day and night, smashing the headboards, if you know what I mean. Has anyone else noticed that he does this kind of pucker where he does a duck face? Kind of like a lot of women do when they do selfies. I just always found that weird about him. This one follows the formula to a certain point and then just totally goes in this direction, that direction.
You go ahead and read your Bible, and you go to your church, and with any luck you might win the annual raffle. But if you're looking for God, he was in operating room number 2 on November 17th, and he doesn't like to be second-guessed.
It's almost a completely different movie by the end of the movie, and that's what makes it so great. Coming in at number 12 is Speak No Evil, came out in 2024. This one is the psycho family you meet while on vacation. An American family who are invited to stay at a remote farmhouse of a British couple for the weekend. But the hosts soon test the limits of their guests as the situation keeps escalating. You got James McAvoy, Mackenzie Davis, and Scoot McNairy. McAvoy is just a complete force here. He's always just giving it his all. You see it through his freaking veins popping out of his neck half the time. I must admit, I found all the characters in this movie completely unlikable. The wife is really annoying at times, and the husband is such a complete cuck. But at least the wife shows some cojones at the end of the film. You've got some great scenes like a non-vegetarian dinner scene. I have to admit, if it was me, I would have been out the first day. I mean, they find dirty bed sheets the minute that they walk in. That would have been enough for me to get in the damn car and go. And then you've got a scene involving a safety stuffed animal. I don't want to spoil too much, but all I can say is I'm not going back to that house to pick up a stuffed animal. I'm out. Coming in at number 11 is Bring Her Back. Came out in 2025. And this one is known as the Psycho Foster Mom. Andy and his sister Piper face unsettling events while living with their foster mother Laura, whose grief and secrets draw them into a chilling supernatural ordeal. You got Sally Hawkins playing the eccentric, unhinged foster mom. Billy Barrett plays Andy, and most of the movie is followed through his point of view. And little Sora Wong is absolutely adorable. I want to take her into my home immediately. But the big character here is Jonah Wren Phillips, who plays Laura's son Oliver, who's got some stuff going on. If you want your domestic thriller to be more on the demonic side, with lots of body horror and gore, this is the one for you. This movie came very close to being my favorite horror movie of last year, but unfortunately, at the end of the movie, it took a slight turn that I really did not like, but I can't argue how great it is. And kicking off my top 10 is Disclosure. Came out in 1994. And I call this one the Psycho Ex-Girlfriend, Who's Your New Boss? Tom Sanders, in charge of production for a tech company in the middle of a lucrative merger, is invited by Meredith Johnson, an old flame that just passed him over for promotion, and before he can even finish a phone call, she's unzipping his pants and trying to seduce him. After wrestling with her and morality, he just can't go through with it, and the next day she sues him for sexual harassment. This one stars Michael Douglas and Demi Moore. At times, this movie plays more like a court drama. Although it's more through mediation, it never actually ends up in court. It also has lots of corporate politics and espionage. Both Tom and Meredith go through some victories and some losses, but the ending is so triumphant. Coming in at number 9 is The Gift. Came out in 2015. And I like to call this the psycho old high school classmate. When married couple Simon and Robin unexpectedly encounter Gordo, an acquaintance from Simon's past, little do they know how their perfect lives will be thrown into a terrifying tailspin. At first, Simon doesn't recognize Gordo, but after a troubling series of uninvited encounters and gifts, a horrifying secret emerges. As Robin learns what really happened between them, she begins to question everything. You got Jason Bateman, Rebecca Hall, and Joel Egerton playing the quirky Gordo. This is one movie that I don't want you to know too much about. Don't watch trailers, just go check it out. It is so good. The performances are great. It has so many different twists and turns. Coming in at number 8 is The Cable Guy. Came out in 1996. Obviously, this is the Psycho Cable Guy. Cable installer Chip Douglas attempts to strike up a friendship with customer Steven Kovacs by offering him free cable. When Steven rebuffs Chip's frequent need for companionship, Chip goes from mildly eccentric acquaintance to full-on psycho stalker. Though it's increasingly apparent to Steven that the cable guy is dangerous, convincing his friends, family, and the authorities of that is another matter entirely. You got Jim Carrey, Matthew Broderick. So obviously this is not a thriller movie, but it does use the thriller formula, and it uses it perfectly. This was definitely a misunderstood Jim Carrey comedy from back in the day, and I think it's so clever that it might be his best film. You got the medieval time scene, you got the basketball game scene, but my favorite is when Chip comes over and plays Porno Password with Steven and his parents.
Peanut. Penis. Penis.
Vagina?
Yes! She got vagina! She got vagina! I would have said Sean.
Coming in at number 7 is Orphan. Came out in 2009. And this is the psycho-adopted child movie. Devastated by the loss of their unborn baby, Kate and John decide to adopt a child. At the orphanage, they feel drawn to a little girl named Esther, and soon they take their new daughter home. But when a dangerous series of events unfolds, Kate begins to suspect that there's something evil lurking inside the child's angelic exterior. You got Isabel Furman, Vera Farmiga, and Peter Skarsgård. Skarsgård plays the husband, and he is just a complete sucker as he is wrapped totally around this little girl's finger. You've got 2 other children here, and all I can say is, after going through all this stuff, they're gonna need serious therapy. This is definitely a thriller mixed with a lot of kind of slasher elements, so this is a little bloodier than most thrillers are. The big reveal at the end of the movie is huge. Coming in at number 6 is The Housemaid. Came out in 2025. And this one is known as, well, I'm not going to tell you, because that would spoil the whole thing. Millie, a woman with a criminal past, takes a job as a live-in maid for a wealthy, erratic Nina Winchester and her husband Andrew, as well as their little daughter. Millie soon uncovers dangerous, twisted secrets, realizing that the family is not what they seem, leading to a high-stakes battle for survival. Once again, this is another movie that I think you should go in blind. The less you know, the better. Don't watch any trailers. Just go and check it out. It is so good. It definitely goes in a lot of different directions, but you also get what you came to watch. Sydney Sweeney obviously is going to give you some great steamy scenes. Siegfried plays an unhinged wife who just kind of loses it at times. Sklender's performance is solid as always, and you have Michelle Morone playing a mysterious gardener. Coming in at number 5 is The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Came out in 1992. And what can I say? This is the original Psycho Nanny movie. When assaulted by her doctor, Claire reports him to the police. Rather than go to jail for his crimes, he kills himself. And the shock of all this causes the doctor's wife, Peyton, to miscarriage. Driven with rage, she poses as a nanny for the Bartell family, and her plan is simple: to tear Claire's life apart, seduce her husband, and eventually murder the woman she blames for ruining her life. You got Rebecca De Mornay, Annabella Sciorra, Matt McCoy, Ernie Hudson, and little Madeline Zima. Well, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. All I can say is Rebecca De Mornay is total hotness. If you've seen the movie Risky Business, most people think about Tom Cruise dancing in his living room. I think about his big scene with De Mornay on a train, and if you know, you know. What she does to this family is absolutely despicable, especially with Hudson's character and the little girl. It made me just want to break something. Coming in at number 4 is Fear. Came out in 1996. And you can call this one the psycho teenage daughter's new boyfriend. It revolves around the wealthy Walker family whose seemingly perfect lives are threatened when teenage daughter Nicole begins dating David McConnell, an attractive and mysterious young man who turns out to be a violent sociopath. Mark Wahlberg was born to play this role, and what I'm about to say may piss off a few people. To me personally, Reese Witherspoon looks like a gremlin. On the other hand, Alyssa Milano is hotness personified. I would have totally shoved Witherspoon aside and walked right up to Milano. But that's just me. The roller coaster scene, which for Nicole was very stimulating.
One finger at a time.
Yum.
2 fingers.
Okay.
And then, if everybody's cool with it, work up to 3.
No, two's good. Now, if my friends aren't around, I'll just finger blast myself.
Nice!
You also have the big confrontation with father going against David, which ends up with daddy walking away and David taking his chest to Pound Town. And as I mentioned, for some reason in these movies, the animal is always the one to get it. In this case, you got Kaiser the German Shepherd, and he was just done so dirty. Coming in at number 3 is Cape Fear. Came out in 1991. And I call this one the psycho you betrayed in court defending, and now he's got a personal vendetta against you. When attorney Sam Bowden knowingly withholds evidence that would acquit violent sex offender Max Cady of serious charges, Max spends 14 years in prison. After his release, knowing about Sam's deceit, he devotes his life to stalking and destroying the Bowen family. When practical attempts to stop Max fail, Sam realizes he must act outside the law to protect his wife and daughter. You got Robert De Niro, Nick Nolte, Jessica Lange, and Juliette Lewis. This is also Martin Scorsese, and this is a movie that he remade. Look, this is prime De Niro, and his performance is just legendary. The big scene here is when Max hooks up with Sam's ex/fling. It is a really, really rough scene. In another kind of weird scene, he tries to befriend the daughter by pretending to be her art teacher. And those scenes with Juliette Lewis and him kind of creepily getting a bond, it's just what makes the movie so special. This movie is really not about twists or surprises. You've got a stalker, and what do? And at that time, there may not have been as many laws to protect people for such situations. And so that's what makes this one unique from all the others. Coming in at number 2 is Single White Female. Came out in 1992. And this is the big psycho roommate movie. Having recently split from her fiance, Allison welcomes new roommate Hetty. The two women quickly form a bond, but as Allison starts to rethink her engagement, Hetty grows jealous and hostile. As Allison learns new details about Hetty's life, Hetty gets more violent in her efforts to get Sam out of the picture. Jennifer Jason Leigh steals every scene in this movie. She manipulates every situation. She shows a kind of dark side that just kind of pops up and then disappears. You got Bridget Fonda sporting the pixie cut, and I gotta say, it looks really good on her. Once again, you have that animal getting it in that trope, and all I can say is this one is a little puppy. Oh, how do you do that? I can't. But let's face it, nobody remembers it for any of that stuff. They remember it for Hetty slipping into Allison's boyfriend's bed, and with that haircut, she totally tricks him during some oral stimulation. And let me tell you, this caused a lot of water cooler talk. And all I can say is, I don't know, but he definitely let her finish him off. I don't know any other way to say it. And my number 1 domestic thriller is Gone Girl. Came out in 2014. And this one is known as the Psycho Spouse movie. Former New York-based writer Nick Dunn and her glamorous wife Amy present a blissful portrait of marriage to the public. But when Amy goes missing on the couple's 5th wedding anniversary, Nick becomes the prime suspect in her disappearance. The resulting police pressure and media frenzy cause the Dunn's image of a happy union to crumble, leading to tantalizing questions about who Nick and Amy truly are. You got Ben Affleck, Rosamund Pike, and Neil Patrick Harris leading this off. And unfortunately, this is another one of those movies that I don't want to speak too much on. I'd rather you go check this out, knowing as little as possible. This is a movie that just keeps changing directions. It also changes point of views, going from Nick to Amy. What I will say is that the antagonist in this movie is a complete monster, but a very clever and intelligent monster at that. The big scene in this movie is the bedroom scene. If you know, you know. So guys, what are your favorite domestic thrillers? I'd love to hear your recommendations. I love this kind of genre. I know that all these movies follow this formula, but they all have different things to offer. From the city that never sleeps, peace, baby.
This is a Brooklyn-bound express train. The next stop is Brooklyn Bridge.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.